Good afternoon. For this talk, I'll need you to transport yourself out of your comfortable environment and into an unfamiliar one. But for you to be able to do that, you'll need to be familiar with an important skill. First off, do you remember the last time you empathized with someone? And do you remember how you went about doing so? What was the process like? Second of all, if I had asked you to define empathy for me, would you know how to? And lastly, do you believe empathy is an emotion or an action? Simply put, if you can mentally transport yourself and allow your imagination to take you into unfamiliar places, places that exist beyond your imagination and your ego, and enter into someone else's perspectives and worldview with the clear intention of wanting to understand where they're coming from or what they've been through or what they're actually feeling, then and only then will you have experienced and practiced empathy. I believe we all have the innate capacity to empathize as human beings, but we're at a day and age where the practical application of empathy is rare, given we're spending a lot of time alone and on social media. So there's no room for practicing empathy with one another, given there's this element of human connection that is missing. I want to shift your attention to the younger generation that is growing up online. So a lot of kids nowadays are growing up on different social media platforms. We can easily say that social media platforms function as digital pixelated playgrounds for these children. And so the problem here is they are not gaining social and human connection as one child would playing on an actual playground with peers. And so I need to shift again your attention to how social media works, or rather the user interface that it is built upon. It is mainly attention grabbing. It functions just to grab your attention so as to you consume as much data as possible. The issue here is, I believe we are passively and mentally present on social media. And so I apologize. We are we are displaying passive mental presence on social media. That is, there is no room for reflection and thinking or creative thinking or imagination. And so if you are not thinking, you are not reflecting. And if you are not reflecting, you are not able to imagine. And when you cannot imagine someone else's perspective or worldview, you have essentially abandoned the chance of empathizing with someone else. So what is the link between empathy and social media? So you may be wondering, what is this link between empathy and social media? I believe empathy is an essential skill of which our society is built upon. And so a society that doesn't really value empathy is a dangerous one, destined for fracture and division. And so we must shift our attention towards our children and ask, what resources do we need to give them to truly develop those emotional skills that shape who they are as individuals, which will eventually contribute to a better society? I had attempted to start the Ripple project back home, where I was trying to curb instances of bullying by displaying emotional videos of kindness and compassion to students from grades 5 till 8. So essentially, they were young students. Now, the core purpose of this really was trying to address the problem of bullying in my school, hoping that by showing them those videos of kindness and compassion and empathy, they would just not be bullies anymore. Now, it was naive for me to assume that this Ripple project of mine will definitely eliminate bullying. I had come to understand that this initiative of mine was only a band-aid on a wound. What I had even come to understand even more clearly is that empathy, compassion, kindness, and other emotional skills cannot be taught on a whiteboard or in a classroom or from a book, but rather they need to be experienced, or rather the child needs to be in an immersive environment to properly foster and develop those emotional skills that we so often label as important. So, what are those immersive experiences I keep talking about, and how can we provide them for our children to truly develop and foster those empathic skills and emotional skills I'm talking about? I want to refer you to an important initiative started in Jordan under the name Little Volunteers, or in Arabic, Al-Mutatawwi' As-Saghir. This wonderful initiative gives opportunities for both children, starting from ages 3 till 12, and their parents to engage in different community-based activities, such as cleaning streets, providing food for the homeless, planting trees, and so much more. I want to bring your attention to the value of such an initiative in that it gives us the opportunity to immerse children in those experiences that truly do develop and foster emotional skills. Therefore, the value of this initiative isn't how much measurable impact the child has left in society or in their community, but rather it's the immersive experience. It's the role of this experience in shaping and developing and instilling emotional skills in children who actually participated in this initiative. In Ontario, for instance, for a student to complete their graduation requirement, they need to be able to complete 40 hours of volunteer work. To some students, this is actually a source of inconvenience and sounds rather unnecessary. Now, coming from their point of view, I can completely understand why they would approach this as unnecessary or even irritating. It's because had we began instilling the values of community work, volunteering, and civic engagement duties, students would have approached this requirement with much more enthusiasm. And so there is a hidden advantage for us to start developing and offering those fostering experiences to children from a very young age. It's because that when they grow up, they will want to give back. They're not forced to, they will want to. They will find joy in it. It's because it's become part of who they are as individuals, given we provided the correct environment for them to develop those emotional skills, such as empathy, compassion, and deep kindness. All this to say, it would be wrong for me to assume that empathy is endangered or it is nowhere to be found. On the contrary, but rather, I'm worried that in this digital day and age, where everything sounds technical and social interaction has become limited to behind screens, the true possibility and chances for children to develop those emotional skills are limited. And so it is up to us to advocate and look for and create even those spaces and opportunities, just like little hands, that allow our children to completely understand, develop, and foster those emotional skills. I believe we can all agree that the best teacher is experience. And so the power of experience cannot be undermined, because when we give our children the suitable environment for them to immerse themselves in volunteer work and selfless activities, they are actively fostering and developing those emotional skills that, as I mentioned before, cannot be taught or instructed from a book or a classroom, but rather organically developed and fostered through those opportunities. And so when we allow our children to empathize, we're actually giving them the chance to imagine and think using someone else's perspective, as opposed to only using their limited perspective. When we allow them to explore and engage, we're actually allowing their minds to expand and grow. So I think it is fair to assume that the impact of those immersive volunteering opportunities lies within their ability to inevitably shape how children will become and who they will become as individuals, because of how much that was developed and fostered through those immersive experiences. I believe it's time for educational policies and educational institutions to approach the issue of emotional literacy and skills with much more urgency and demand. I believe at the core of our humanity lies our ability to empathize with one another, to practice compassion and kindness. And so it is a must Rather, it is a necessity for those educational policies and institutions to offer the new generation the environment and the necessary opportunity to truly develop and foster those emotional skills, which I so desperately believe in. And I hope you're with me on the same page, because I truly cannot imagine a future where empathy does not exist. Can you? Thank you.